Embattled Missouri Governor Eric Greitens has decided to resign, and he announced his resignation during a press conference, which we have some video of. And part of the reason why he's decided to step down as governor is because he has struck a deal with prosecutors. He is facing some rather serious charges, which I'll detail for you in just a minute. But before I do so, let's hear from Greitens himself.
This ordeal has been designed to cause an incredible amount of strain on my family. Millions of dollars of mounting legal bills, endless personal attacks designed to cause maximum damage to family and friends. Legal harassment of colleagues, friends, and campaign workers. And it's clear that for the forces that oppose us, there is no end in sight. I cannot allow those forces to continue to cause pain and difficulty to the people that I love. I know, and people of good faith know, that I am not perfect, but I have not broken any laws nor committed any offense worthy of this treatment. I have talked to many of you who harbor extraordinary anger at this ordeal, and for those who have pushed and promoted it. For those who would be moved to vengeance, let us allow history and God to bring justice.
Wait, it seemed like he was promoting vengeance there. What a strange thing to say. Maybe the prosecutors should reconsider any deal that they made with him based on that insane comment. Remember, he's the one that, look, Anna's going to describe to you what the charges are, but he keeps talking about these nefarious forces that are doing things to him. You're the one who tied up someone and then blackmailed them into sex. Were the nefarious forces in your basement? They made you do that?
Right.
I think there was a nefarious force in your pants.
Well,
okay.
And yeah, you're right. I mean, the way that he is describing what's going on makes it seem as though he's being victimized. But remember, he was, a party favorite, someone who had big ambitions and a lot of support for those big ambitions in the future. And things are not working out for him now because of the extramarital affair he was having and the accusations that were brought forth to the authorities by his mistress. And I'll get into the blackmail charges now, actually. So let's go to graphic 19. In February, there was a grand jury that indicted the governor for invasion of privacy over accusations that he had taken a nude photo of a woman, that was his mistress, with whom he was having the affair, and used it to blackmail her. So he was allegedly concerned that she might go public with their relationship. That would potentially destroy his marriage, but more importantly, potentially destroy his political ambitions. And so he tied her up, blindfolded her, and took this nude photo of her and essentially used it as blackmail. And she decided to go forward to the authorities, which I think was incredibly brave of her to do. Now, a Missouri House committee reported back in April that Greitens had held the woman down in a, quote, bear hug during the March 2015 encounter before pulling out his penis. Among other allegations, the woman testified anonymously that she performed oral sex on him because she thought that would allow me to leave, and she feared for her physical self. Also, keep in mind that through these investigations, they also found that there were some campaign issues. Greitens faced his second felony charge in April for allegedly obtaining a donor list from a charity he founded to use for political fundraising. Apparently, that's against the law, and he faced a charge for that.
Okay, guys, first of all, the Republicans of Missouri wanted him out, and he was their guy. There's no reason why they would want him out, and so they think he did it. Even if you put the other charges, which are very heavy charges, aside, the one thing that has been clear from day one is, and we found out not originally from the mistress, but from her husband. Okay, she was married. She's having an extramarital affair with him. Then he takes her to the basement, ties her up, blindfolds her, takes the nude pictures and says, if you ever tell anyone, I'm gonna release this on the internet. So if you don't know, and apparently some people don't know, that is blackmail and very illegal. So if you think it's a cute or clever thing. Oh, I got naked pictures of you, and if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. You're going to prison for a long time if somebody finds out that you're doing that, and they can easily prosecute you.
Yeah.
You could do, that's true if you're a regular dude who's 18 years old and you thought it was a good idea. It ain't a good idea. It's a really bad idea. It's also true if you're the governor of a state.
Now, again, him stepping down was the result of an agreement, a deal that he struck with prosecutors. On Wednesday, a prosecutor noted that they're dropping a computer tampering charge against him. And so we'll see how this all plays out. But there have been issues with the prosecutor who was specifically looking into the blackmail charges. There was apparently misconduct in that regard, and so they needed to find a special counsel to take on this case.
Yeah, and I would be clear about that. Greitens claimed and alleged that there was misconduct. And so then the Attorney General has to do the right thing, or the prosecutor in this case, and say, all right, well, since there's a charge against me, right or wrong, I got to step aside and let a special counsel deal with it, and that's what was going on. When I saw Greitens resign, I'm like, there's no way this guy, who has been gung-ho from day one, I don't care what I did, it's all a plot against me, right? Stepped down without a deal. So tomorrow, it sounds like, based on what the prosecutor said, we find out what the deal was. And the deal is probably that he's not gonna get prosecuted as long as he gets out. I don't know that for sure, or maybe he gets prosecuted less. Otherwise, they might have thrown the book at him and he might go to prison for a long time.
My understanding is that they plan on pursuing some of the charges, not all of them, and that's part of the deal. That's my understanding so far, but we'll verify that for you.
Yeah, so we know that he stepped aside and we know that there's a deal. We find out the exact contours of that deal tomorrow, but for now at least, Greitens is gone. One of the things that bothered me about Greitens, look, if he had just an affair, I don't care how Republican he is and how much I disagree with him, I'd point out his hypocrisy and I'd make fun and I'd do all those things, but I would say no way he should step aside. If he didn't do a crime, that's between you and your wife, and that has nothing to do with politics. And you know what? If you don't like it, and I don't like it, and I don't like his hypocrisy, then you could vote him out of office next time. And so one of the things that drove me crazy about Greitens is that he knew he had that affair, his wife knew he had that affair, and he still ran a campaign based on family values afterwards. And he put his family all over the ads and talked about how much he cares about his family, knowing that this could come out, but he thought it's not gonna come out because I got pictures of her. So, well, that's both disgusting and illegal, so you're a goner.
I want to talk about this a little more in the post game, like the notion of I love my family, you know, I'm a family values guy, but then they have an affair. I just have some controversial things to say about that.
Ooh.
So I'll say it in the post game. Sorry.
I don't know what that is, but
Yeah.
I've all of a sudden, tyt.com/join. Two easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.